as stated earlier, God will give you a method for putting the enemy under your footstool without destroying yourself in the process. These methods that they're using us for, giving us for coronavirus, yeah, they might kill the coronavirus, but you're going to kill yourself in the process. You know what I'm saying? Like drinking bleach. What fool is going to sit there and drink some bleach knowing it's a toxic poison? Some people did because they heard Donald Trump say it, so they did it and they ended their life. But the people they claim are dying of corona, they're not dying of corona. They're dying from high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune disease. And when the body's immune system is low, anything will attack it. You know what I'm saying? They would have died anyway. They would, most of them are older people with complications. Now, keep in mind though, this is a germ weapon. Viruses do mutate, and they can form other more deadly viruses. They're talking about a second wave coming in the fall, and that's another strange thing. When are you known a flu virus to break out in the summer? You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be a flu virus, okay? People that got the flu shots, they're totally ineffective. They've not eradicated one disease. We have a whole lecture on the history of vaccines, but they have not eradicated one disease with a vaccine, okay? And so polio, how long they had the polio vaccine? Since the early 1900s. They have not eradicated polio yet, okay? And so what I'm saying is, and any other disease with vaccines. So the point is that when you build your immunity up naturally through natural herbs and raw fruit and vegetables, your body's immunity is strong and no enemy can attack you. And when you get ready to attack the enemy, see, farmers have to learn certain lessons. And, those lessons they learn allow them to be able to attack the enemy without attacking their crops, if they're doing it organically. You know what I'm saying? It reminds me of a parable in the scriptures where Yeshua, the Christ, spoke about the wheat and the tare. Now, the wheat farmer has to be very carefully studied and be able to identify a wheat crop from a tare because they look just alike. They grow just alike. They taste just alike. They make bread, they mill in the bread just alike. But the difference is the tare is poisonous. So if the farmer doesn't have a distinct eye in order to identify the difference between the wheat and the tare, it could be the difference between life and death. Life and death. So this is the point that we have to understand. We have to learn the ability to identify the enemy. And keep in mind, the Corona-19 is not your enemy. All viruses and bacteria are your enemy. You know what I'm saying? Anything that will harm your physical temple. Your body has so many thousands of immune cells, T cells, and I was listening to a report recently. Now they've all of a sudden discovered that the T cells that people who had the virus already and survived it have antibodies to fight off the virus. Well, that's something they know anyway. That's something they know anyway, that they have virus, that the body builds T cells. They just now discovering that, okay? A Kenyan doctor, when the HIV virus broke out in Africa, which they took over to Africa, that's a whole nother subject about how HIV got to Africa. And by the way, this Corona-19 was a form of population control. The globalists want to reduce the world population. And what better source than China, the most populated country in the world, to test the weapon, okay? And it's going into Africa. They mutated another form of it that will attack Africans. And will attack, even though Africa has a low count on the current corona, they have another form that's mutated that attacks Africans. And even though children and teenagers have a low corona, as far as the deaths from corona, they got another form that's starting to kill teenagers, even 13-year-olds who really have the strongest immune system on the planet. But with the HIV, what I'm saying is that there was a Kenyan doctor who discovered a protein that's in the black genome called interferon. And it's called interferon because it's part of the immune system, and it actually it interferes with viruses and bacteria being able to replicate inside your body. And this interferon, when they extract it, it fights cancer, it fights any type of disease, any type of degenerative disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, it fights it off. And so they patent this drug, and some of the richest families in Europe are using this drug. And they were getting it from dead cadavers, dead blacks. But now all of a sudden, they found that they can get a real potent form from black teenagers. That's why I was suspicious about the 1970s Atlanta child murders, where young black boys were murdered. And though they got a black man for this crime, Wayne Williams, but it turns out he stated in his autobiography that he had ties with right-wing militias. Well, that's not unusual for them to use black. I was in D.C. when the D.C. sniping went down, and we're going to talk about that in detail. But the D.C. sniping thing went down. John Muhammad, he never was a Muslim. He was trained in the military in Iraq, and he was. They say he hung out in Tacoma, Washington, where all the white militias hang out, and he was trained as a Class A sniper by the U.S. military in Iraq. So they known to use black all the time. Haven't they used us in all their wars? Malcolm X used to say, "We bleed when the white man bleeds. We fought in every war and got less for it." So, any rate, the point I'm saying, how do we build our immunity to this corona? Well, the first step, you got to remember, your body is 87% water, okay? Just like this earth, 87% water. If you examine your hand is nothing. It's made just like a leaf, okay? It got the same veins in it, just like these leaves behind me. The hand is made just like a leaf, okay? It got the same veins in it. You just like a walking tree. And they take earth minerals and convert it into plant minerals. And then Yah has made this cycle of nature so magnificent that you're able to take that water and convert the earth minerals and convert them into those plant minerals and convert them into body, your minerals for your body. There are thousands and thousands of minerals and vitamins, essential and non-essential. I remember recently I was a plasma donor, and one of the plasma nurses told me, I said, "What are you eating?" I said, "Well, I eat raw fruit and vegetables." She says, "Well, maybe you shouldn't eat raw fruit and vegetables because vitamin K, that can cause strokes." I said, "Well, I don't take vitamin K supplements, but I eat raw fruits and vegetables." And I said, now you telling me I'm 61 years old. I don't take any medication. I've never been sick. Never took any medication in my entire life. I walk about 5 miles, between 5 and 8 miles a day. You telling me that vitamin K is gonna cause me? They checked all my vital signs. They all good. My heart rate, my everything else, my blood pressure, and all that. And you telling me that vitamin K is something wrong with vitamin K? See, ask yourself a question. How come you never hear, if you listen to the radio, if you watch major networks, and by the way, at that Corona meeting that they had in New York in October, the media was there. All the major media was there, radio, TV, and they were told what to say and when to say it. They were given a script by the United States government, okay? And I did my undergrad degree in filmmaking. And before I went to Howard University to work on a PhD in African Studies. And, I was told when I was in my media training that the media is supposed to be the watchdog of the government, okay? I did a documentary down in Tupelo, Mississippi on the civil rights movement. And I got some awards for it. It was shown at the Alternative Cinema Conference. It was held in upstate New York in 1979. And, but they taught us that the media, and I was part of the Third World Film Conference, was chaired by Dr. Clyde Taylor at UCLA. And we pushed for more blacks to be programming on PBC, Corporation Public Broadcasting, and several other broadcasters. But my question is, how is it that they telling us that you're gonna get sick? In other words, if you come in contact with somebody that's got corona, you're gonna get sick and you're gonna die. You come in contact with people every day. Did we just start coming in contact with people when this coronavirus broke out? Are there no other diseases out there other than corona? The bubonic plague. First, let me talk about the so-called Spanish influenza that broke out in this country in 1918. My grandmama and grandfather survived it. And 1918 wiped out 500,000 Americans in 1 year. And it was some type of it was during World War I, and it was some kind of German warfare, and the soldiers took it from different countries back home. They always get it from animals, and they got it from the bird flu. It was a form of H1N1 when they autopsied these dead birds from that era. They found that it was H1N1, and which is a bird flu. And but at any rate, how did they beat the Spanish influenza? Not with a vaccine, not with mandatory quarantines, not by shutting the country down. The people who were strong had the strong immune system. The ones that died had the weak immune systems. The ones that had the strong immune, they survived, and they developed. If they came in contact with it, they developed the antibodies to fight it off, and they passed it on to the next generation. Okay, so now this point about washing hands. Now that's always vital. That's always crucial. But that's something I did as a child. I didn't need the white folk to tell me about washing your hands. We always wash our hands. I've worked at call centers, for example. Well, I saw the managers, the white managers, they ain't wash their hands. So they don't even tell us that. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is sanitation. Do you know that the bubonic plague almost wiped out 2/3 of Europe? Because they didn't have basic sanitation. The rats and roaches, if it wasn't for the Moors from Morocco who conquered Spain, and the kings were illiterate. The kings, they didn't have toilets. They the trash. They didn't have trash cans. They pick up the trash. So many died from the bubonic plague. They said they had. They called it Black Death in the 13th and 14th century. They had big buggies that came out, and the guy had a bullhorn. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. And the person that died, they burned all their clothes, the house they lived in, everything, every possession that person had, they had to destroy. Okay. And ironically, but it was a big city in Europe. They had in Rome, they had the big cities where they had all these people living on top of each other. And then the thing broke out in China when they had big cities in China, where they had all these people living on top of each other. And where's the corona breaking out in the U.S.? In the big cities, New York, Chicago, all these people living on top of each other. And that's why when I grew up in Chicago, I got out of there quick as I could. At age 7, once I graduated high school, I was out of there. And I lived in D.C. When I was in college in D.C., I went once or twice in New York. I was scared of New York because, this is a city with all these people. I'll tell you, it's just a breeding ground for a pandemic, okay? And we know how the government was not going to give you the right solution. People say, why you use that all the time? Well, I'm going to use Tuskegee because we know that they didn't get a black man syphilis. No, they got syphilis over there in Europe. They were World War II soldiers over there in Europe, messing around with them sleazy, white, nasty white hookers. That's how they got syphilis. But they had the syphilis, and when they went to, it was a black clinic in Tuskegee. As a matter of fact, one of the Bill Clinton's Secretary of Health, Henry Louis Foster, was a pediatrician in that clinic, and he was part of that cover-up, even though he claimed he wasn't. A black nurse that was part of it helped write the book, Bad Blood, the Tuskegee Experiment, and I recommend everybody read that book. And she was part of it, and so but she helped write that book, and so the black soldiers were told they just had a little bad blood, and they were allowed to spread the syphilis to their wives, their girlfriends, and then also because they were studying how syphilis, it was called territory syphilis, how a form of syphilis kills you. They want to know how they could use syphilis as a germ weapon, And it wasn't the first time. You go back in history when the Africans, and I got a clip on my YouTube channel about the history of Back to Africa movements. One of the ways they sabotaged the early Back to Africa movements, they brought in a bunch of white prostitutes and dumped in. They brought syphilis into Africa, into Liberia, into Sierra Leone, where they had these black colonies. So this is not new, use the STDs as a germ weapon. But what I'm saying, my point I'm making is that to build your immunity, there's certain things you got to do. Now, water is essential, but the water you can't just drink any kind of water. The tap water we're drinking there's no minerals in that water. You got to recycle that water. And I'm gonna do a whole lecture on the Zen water system, a system that shows you how to recycle the water. And if you want more information on the Zen water system, just email me at shaknakuti@gmail.com. That's SHAKNAKHUT or text me at air code 251-228-7056. And I'll send you information on the Zen water system, how you literally can convert your tap water back into spring water. Okay. Back into spring water. And the spring water, with all the minerals in it, because it actually takes the water through reverse osmosis, and it stores it in a storage 2.5 gallon storage tank. There's a carbon dome at the top that takes out the pesticides, the herbicides, and all the chemicals in the water. And then the rocks from some of the richest springs in the world, that's in the base of the system, actually puts the minerals back in the water. Okay, but we were actually, what I'm saying, pure water is what really heals the body. So you need to drink. They say 2 ounces of water for every pound of body weight you are. But I say as a general rule, try to get it up to 2 gallons a day if you can. Get up to 2 gallons a day. If you're drinking a gallon a day, that's good, but try to get up to 2 gallons because water is what heals the body. Dick Gregory used to talk about how nutrition, important water is. He used to go on water fast. But another thing that you need to build your strong immunity, blue-green algae, and I'm going to do a whole tape on blue-green algae. But I first became interested in it because I heard Dick Gregory mention it. And there was a reverend in D.C. that had talked about it. And as I began to study more about ancient Egypt, I found they were the first one to use this blue-green algae. And when the Nile flooded, it would leave this rich silt. They call it silt, which is a form of blue-green algae that it covers the desert area. And those air when it now recedes again, it leaves that silt out there, and man, everything grows. I mean, everything grows in that desert from that silt. And when I was traveling in West Africa, I was on my PhD program at Howard University. I was African studies. I was studying tropical diseases, and I noticed in some parts of Senegal that these lagoons, these little inland lakes, the women would scoop this film, this algae, off the lake and then lay it out and let it dry. And they would put in cakes and breads and this kind of thing. And they'd be in areas that have been decimated by malaria, dysentery, all kind of tropical disease, river blindness. But the ones that ate this algae weren't getting sick. And then when I came back, I found out that it was being distributed in health food stores. It was called spirulina, spirulina. And spirulina is the world's richest food. It's the oldest food. See, in the beginning, the whole earth was water. The Bible tells you that. And they said some came from the face of the waters. But what I'm saying is that the one-cell microorganisms were the first forms of life on this planet. And the sun was so hot, it was 2,000 degrees before the first ozone was developed on Earth. It was too hot for any life forms to come up. But the algae, one-cell microorganisms, respirated into the oxygen that produced the first ozone, which cools the Earth down cool enough to start producing life or multi-celled organism. And the first life came from the water, and from the water into the land. And but the thing is, so the algae is the building blocks for every form of life. So as a result, this algae contains every mineral. There's something, I don't care what sickness you get, there's always some plant somewhere that's going to cure it. You probably remember your grandmother and my grandmother. She knew certain plants. And my great-grandmother, which I still remember my great-grandmother, used certain plants to heal certain ailments. And they didn't believe in diet. They didn't use medication. They used the plants. And, the Bible tells you that, Genesis 1:29, he says, I give you every herb, man, seed, it be you fee as meat. And also it speaks about the herbs for the healing of the nations. So that was God's medicine. So the algae contains every mineral. And keep in mind, nutrition heals your body. I'll say it again. Nutrition heals the body. You're not getting nutrition from meat. Okay? If God had intended for man to eat meat, first of all, you'd be able to eat it raw because no carnivores cook their meat. You ever seen a lion cooking his meat? You ever seen a dog cooking his meat? Okay? They eat it raw. Okay? And God gave them the canines teeth to tear that flesh up, that raw flesh, to be able to eat the meat, okay? And also, he gave them an intestinal tract that was short, only a few feet, because that meat needs a short intestinal tract to be able to digest. Whereas the human intestinal tract is balled up in your abdomen, it's over 25 length of a football field, 25 to 30 feet long. Okay, so that's not made for meat. Okay, look at our fingers. Our fingers are made for fruits, picking fruits. We don't have claws to tear flesh like lions and animals, other animals have. Okay, the hydrochloric acid in our saliva is designed to digest fruits and vegetables, not not meat. Now you say, what about protein? You need protein for strength. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. Who's the strongest animal in the jungle? What you know is stronger than an elephant? What you know is stronger than a mountain gorilla, which is about 300 pounds or 400 pounds of pure muscle? What you know is stronger than a rhinoceros. Okay? Let a lion try to tangle with a rhinoceros, a full-grown rhinoceros, and see you have a dead lion, okay? Or elephant. If he get his trunk around that lion, he'll choke that lion to death, okay? So what I'm saying is, they all vegetarians. They don't eat meat. Rhinoceros don't eat meat. Elephants don't eat meat. They eat fruits. Mountain gorillas don't eat meat. They eat fruits, okay? And the animals you eat don't eat meat. Chickens don't eat meat. Now, chickens, one thing about chickens, though, the hogs do. All hogs eat anything. And one thing about the hogs, see, you got to remember now, you eating an animal, those of you still eating hog. First of all, the Bible condemns it. It says, Genesis, it's in Leviticus. In Isaiah 19:19, it says, they hid behind the tree eating swine's flesh, an abomination, saith the Lord. Not saith man, not saith me, shotgun, but saith the Lord. It's an abomination. Christ, you say, well, the New Testament, Christ came with the New Testament. Yeah, well, Christ cast the demons out. Where they go? Went right into the swine. Okay, and casting those. So what I'm saying, where do you see him? Nowhere you see Christ eating swine flesh. Okay, so the point I'm making is that the swine was an animal that was brought to America. Pig was brought to America to create vaccines, because the vaccines contain disease, and the pig holds every known disease in his body. You can't poison a pig, because a pig holds every known disease. And he was brought for vaccines. And that's when they brought the pig over here. Wild hogs were in the wild, but the pig was developed in a laboratory. And it tells you in Isaiah, he was developed from a rat, cat, and a dog. He has whiskers like a cat, a tail like a rat, and he barks like a dog. Anybody raise hog will let you know. A hog will eat anything. And if you keep eating that hog, you'll eat anything. He wallows in the mud. He's the filthiest animal wallowing in the mud. And here's now, God created these animals like the hog, like shrimps in the water, like these animals to eat the scat, to eat up the scum, to eat up the filth of the earth. Not for us to make it as food, okay? And the thing about it is that, and the heavier animal is, the more toxins he holds in his body, What's heavier than a hog, But even a cow is a heavy animal. He carries a lot of toxins in his body. And I had bad allergies growing up, and Spirit told me, stop eating that crying swine flesh. I stopped eating the swine flesh, but it told me to stop eating cow's meat. That's what I meant to say. And the cow's meat, what I found out later was, my eyes were swelling, my throat was swelling up, because parasites. See, parasites lay eggs. They lay over 10,000 eggs a day. They start biting you in your throat, biting you in your neck, and then next thing you know, you got parasites. So this is important. You need a good parasite cleanse. That's the next step, building a strong immune system. Parasite cleanse. Now, I developed one with African and Native American herbs to target the 5-channel elimination: the colon, the liver, the pancreas, and the lymphatic system. And you can get that parasite cleanse. Contact me by email at Shakna-Khuti, that's SHAKNA-KHUTI @gmail.com, or by text at 251-228-7056. And this is the end of part 1. And may the pieces and blessings of Yah be with you. Shalom.